and build is a turnkey solution. It's a turnkey approach where the design and build expert design and the contractor under one roof, um, and they can look after your project. But we can talk more about that in a minute. Why planning permission matters? Well, it is important because it is a statutory aspect of getting planning permission. So it has to be done, whether your project needs a planning permission or a certificate of law of development, that will be discussed. But it's also to protect the environment, is to ensure safety, and to ensure the community interest is preserved. Um, what projects need planning permission? In a nutshell, new homes, every project that is starting from scratch needs a planning permission, whether it's a large extension as well, double-story rear extension, or a big rear additions. Major alterations to existing properties, like loft conversions, exceeding the limits of 3.5 meters, and a change of use, whether you're changing commercial to residential, or converting an existing property into flats, that also needs a planning permission in general. Now, what projects do need planning permission, and how can you add value to your property? How can that add value to your property? Well, these projects that are labeled from 1 to 12, most of them do not require planning permission because they may fall under permitted development rights. Item number 9 does require planning permission for sure. But what is this leading to is that if you are talking about, if we are talking about a household planning application, then these projects fall under permitted development. And this is what we want to say. A certificate of lawful development is what you may need to secure your planning approval, your planning consent. And most of these projects fall under the general permitted development order. And a lot of additions, a lot of extensions do fall under that. So whether you're adding to your property, or extending or converting a loft, they all fall under permitted development. Now, obviously, if you have a terraced home, or a semi-detached home, or a detached home, the extension in the back, they do vary in terms of depth. For example, detached homes, they're allowed 8 meters under permitted development rights. Semi-detached are allowed 6 meters under permitted development rights, and they don't have to go through consultation. We'll talk about that a bit more. This is a project, a typical project where permitted development rights were exercised to add a loft, to add a dormer, to add a rear extension and a side extension. All of these were achieved under permitted development rights. So within the context of household planning applications, the permitted development rights can be exercised without the need for a planning permission per se, but you still have to produce drawings, you still have to produce submit a certificate of law for development application, and what have you. Now, let's talk about the life cycle of a planning application. The life cycle of the planning application starts with registration, the planning application. It goes then to validation, and then it goes to consultation, and then a decision can be made. If the decision is not to your favor, you can appeal. However, with certificate of law for development applications, it doesn't go through consultation, and therefore the decisions are quicker, and you basically will get that application sorted. Now, planning consideration in that regard are local policies, whether it's a conservation area or an Article 4 direction. Article 4 is where permitted development rights are suspended. Therefore, they do not exercise, and this is where you need to go into a planning application. Site context. Site context is very important. Symmetry sometimes is very important. Overlooking to neighbors is important. The impact of your project on your neighbors, whether it's daylight and sunlight, or whether it's a tree that is existing there that needs to be looked after, and the design quality and the materials that you are proposing, they are all very important to the planning officer. We're now going into a case study. We have a number of case studies, and I would like to talk about them. And this is where the scope is important. A project like this one did require a planning application, but because this is a project in SW20 where um, it was all about a rear extension, a garage conversion, a loft conversion, internal remodeling, outbuilding, and landscaping. So the whole shebang. So this project basically encompasses all type of maximizing the value of this client's property. The way the project is approached is by having a digital twin, which is basically an accurate way to survey. Gone are the days where you do it manually. It's all now digital. So we get a 3D model of the existing, and then we start working on that. From there on, we start developing the design that falls within the permitted development rights. If it is the case, and then we start visualizing that. And this is where things come quite interesting because clients tend to like the 2D aspect of drawing it and showing how does the project relate to the garden that we are developing within. But also the interiors are also very important for them to understand and for us to flesh out what the impact of natural light on everything. So that's a case study where the property was maximized to its full, and it did require planning permission. The next case study is Leonard Road, which is in Bromley. This is a project that did not require planning application, although it included a rear extension, which is within permitted development rights, but also included a first story extension, which, as you can see here, this did not exist. And so that was straightforward. It didn't really require much planning as such. And then this is how it is when it's completed. You can see that the extension did go as much as a semi-detached, which is 6 meters, go to, and the whole property is changed. This is how it is when it is on the second floor, and this is how it was before it was extended. And on the right side are the finished images. This case study is quite interesting because the client owned this property which had a garden, and they wanted to maximize on the return on investment. So they bought this property thinking, okay, I can renovate the existing, but what can I do with the garden? And then when we discussed this with them, we said, okay, we can basically get you another unit which becomes an end of terrace, and the existing one gets to be a terraced home. So this included a refurbishment of the existing, the building of a new house adjacent to the existing one, which sits within the curtilage of the property. The planning process started with a pre-planning application, followed by a full planning application. The challenges are it was an area of special interest, which means that it's not a conservation area, but the council had a special interest in what goes there and what doesn't. The end of terrace now is a new property which added value to the whole site and to the client. One of the challenges was about the existing tree, for example. In the next slide, we can see that the existing tree, which we saw here, which is this one, is within 5 meters of the new property. And so this client, as a developer, wanted to maximize. So we had to come up with a structural solution that necessitates piling, and we ended up having a single story rear extension on piles, which is, an unnecessary. But we had to do it because the council would not sign off and would not allow for anything but a pile structural solution. So that is something to look for as a constraint when embarking on such projects. The fourth project and final project I would like to talk about is how we approach design. This client came in wanting an internal remodeling of their property. And so the way we do things usually is submit three options. We submit three options based on what the client wants, which is in this case this option, an alteration of what they want, which is this option, and then a totally different approach on what they wanted. And then, believe it or not, they ended up going to option three, because it maximized on the value of the property. And then And then that's what they went for. And then visualizing the project becomes important for them to understand. So this is option one on top left, where the open plan living, kitchen, dining. This is option two on the right, top right, where there's privacy and there's a study in between to give us more privacy to both spaces. And this is option three, where we maximized on the living area, living, dining, kitchen. So that triangle became quite an important one. And so this is how adding value and the design process becomes very important to be incorporated. So planning applications, design, they go hand in hand, and understanding what is allowable within permitted development rights, and when do we need planning application and when do we not, especially when we talk about projects like this one. This one necessitated a planning application because it does not fall under permitted development, and we're building a new house, but also converting the existing. I'd like now to put in a video. So let's just play the video.
Renovating? Before you start, talk to Refresh, because we're changing the way the world renovates. Meet John and his neighbour Mary. Both are planning to renovate, but in very different ways. John does things the traditional way. He's got some ideas, talks to some builders, gets multiple drawings done, but he doesn't know how much it's all going to cost. Doesn't matter, because he'll get a few free quotes. Mary gets a visit from Rodney at Refresh. After a thorough consultation, he shows her similar projects to help her get a realistic sense of what to budget. Rodney then brings in his designer, who comes up with an initial concept, while his estimator prepares a
Whatever.
schedule and costing.
Oops. Right, we had a glitch.
Renovating? Remember that free quote? Turns out it's not accurate. Too bad he's halfway through. Mary's project manager submits the estimator's report to contractors and suppliers. He reviews all their quotes and is able to finalise accurate project costs. He also manages the tender process, produces a timeline, and does all the contracts and paperwork. He even keeps the tradies on track. It's all going to plan. At John's house, things are not looking so good. Unplanned costs keep popping up. He's already invested in drawings and building consent, but it's back to the drawing board to get back on track. Once building starts, Mary feels in control. She can relax, while Refresh takes care of everything. She can even keep an eye on progress anytime, using Refresh's online project portal. But John has to project manage everything himself, which is way out of his comfort zone. There's a lot to do, and he's not trained to run a build. In the end, it costs him thousands. The Refresh way of doing things means Mary's project ran smoothly, efficiently, and on time. She now has a home she can be proud of, while John is left wondering how he's going to pay for everything. So if you're dreaming of renovating, avoid a nightmare and contact Refresh, because we're changing the way the world renovates.
This is just building on what the options are, and I'm going to hand over to Ali. Ali is a contractor, and he will basically run you through what it means to be working on a design and build approach rather than a traditional design approach. Ali, I can hand over to you.
Thank you, Salim. I'm Ali Irtaza. I'm one of the Refresh franchisees covering West London. So what Salim alluded to initially was that you have two options. One is to go for planning and then look for a contractor, or you opt for the design and build approach. And I think the hallmark of the refresh process here is that we don't want any loss of communication. And that's why design and build is under one roof. So we start off with your vision, take you through the design process, and then we build so that we can achieve your vision. And you, as a homeowner, you need to take multiple decisions. Our process is trying to put those into these three buckets, where you start with the scoping and feasibility of the project. Then you get some design options, and we give you estimates for those options. And then you finally select the one that best suits your requirements and your budget, and then we build it for you, making sure that from start to finish, it's all completely in compliance with your requirements, and we complete it on budget and on time. Please move to the next slide. Now, this is the five-step process I was referring to. And very quickly, I'll run through it. So we start with an initial consultation, which is a free of charge consultation on the site. It allows us to come and view your property and understand your vision better. Moving on to the point of concept and feasibility, where the idea is to understand that vision and give you estimates of similar projects that we have done, so that you get an idea whether your proposed project would meet your budget or not. If we choose to move to the next step, that's where the planning permission process starts. That's where all the professionals would come in, like the structural engineer or any other professional needed for the project. And we would come to a stage where we finalize the drawings plus your specification. So we can come to a step where we can give you a final quotation of your project. Because initially we've started with estimates. And then once we have finalized the drawings and your specifications, we can come to a point where you can get a quotation from us. By that time, because we've gone through a process where we have eliminated the choices which would have had a negative impact on your budget, we have come to a stage where the vision has been accomplished in terms of drawings, and we have come to a stage where the costing has been done, which is within your desired budget. And the fourth step is to start the building work. Having spent that extra time at the pre-construction phase, the build phase is smooth, and we are able to control the project on time and on budget. And finally, at step number 5 is to hand over your finished project, your finished home to you, so that you can be proud of the results and proudly show it to your friends and family. Please move to the next slide. Now, Refresh Renovation does a variety of projects. If you will check our website, you will see various case studies of these type of projects that we have done. But we undertake small, medium, and large size projects. The small and medium could be bathroom and kitchen refurbs, garage conversions. Medium to large would be extensions and loft conversions or basement conversions. And but all of the projects, irrespective of their size, would follow the same 5-step process. That 5-step process is inherent to our work, and that allows us to make sure that the project is completed on budget and on time. Next slide, please. Salim, would you like to take on from here? You're on mute, Salim.
Sorry, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ali. As promised, we are ending this presentation with sharing with you the top tips that significantly impact the speed of a household planning application or any other application. But in the context of household planning application, the tip number 1 is submission checklist. The application will require detailed and accurate plans, block plans, site plans, floor plans, elevations, and everything that is required for the planning officer to assess it. Now, the assessment necessitates a design and access statement in some cases, always also referred to as DAS, and that is dependent on the project itself. Most permitted development projects do not require DAS, but there are cases where they are being asked. Fire compartmentation is a must, especially after Grenfell. That has been a must to submit as part of any planning application. Tree survey, as we saw in the case of other applications, even if it falls under permitted development, you have to come up with a tree survey if the tree is protected or if it's of a special nature that needs to be preserved. A sill form. With every planning application or with every certificate of law of development, you have to present a sill form. A community infrastructure levy is a tax that you pay to the council in case you exceed a specific number of square meters that you are basically calling to build. And if you pay the wrong fee, paying the wrong fee means delays, means your project is not going to be validated to go to the next stage. Tip number 2 is ignoring potential objections. Neighbors could object. If you submit a full planning application, neighbors could and may object, but if it falls under permitted development, and like for example, if you have a semi-detached property and you are allowed for a 6 meters rear extension, even if they object, they cannot their objection is not going to be really valid. But if you exceed the 6 meters, that they need to approve it. And that's where it becomes important. Potential impacts on their privacy. If it's above 3 meters, for example, it may impact on the amount of light, or that they may have a loss of light. Or if you end up having a balcony on that terrace, they will have an issue with privacy. Overshadowing. So always talking about how high is that structure going to be and what is the impact on the neighbors. Top tip number 3 is making changes during the process. Never, ever, ever make changes once you've logged an application, because it will, whether it's minor or a major change, it will always delay the process. And it may even trigger that changing and restarting the whole process to begin with. So once you've done the design work, once you've approved it, once you've done all what you need to do, paid your fee, just don't change, because that will mean restarting the whole application. Some planning officers do allow for an exchange of one drawing or two, but when you change or change the design, they will not really be happy, and they will ask you to restart. Something to consider before we close is that today's preparation is tomorrow's success. The more we prepare before you submit a planning application, the more engagement to do with your neighbors, whether you're building a rear extension or an office building at the end of your property. You have to talk to your neighbors. You have to basically prepare and make sure that whatever you want to build is achievable. For example, I had a client lately who bought a property. They had a property which had a rear extension, but they wanted to have a double-story rear extension. And when we came in, because it was like a big property and they wanted to build so overdevelop it basically, and they wanted to have a double-story rear extension and everything that comes with it. But in that specific instance, we could not do it. And though they said, well, had I known that I could not get what I want now, I wouldn't have bought the property. And so sometimes you need to talk to the experts before you even engage and buy the property. And a lot of people are doing that these days. And so the more you prepare, the better you do it. Any questions, please put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself to ask any questions. Please do so.
Celine, there's quite a few questions in the chat there from Christopher. Thanks, Christopher, for putting in your questions in the chat. Celine, can you see them, or do you want me to read them through for you guys?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the first question is, if certificate route, does the council publish the certificate?
No.
Okay, nice and easy. Next one, how is future value and development costs calculated?
Well, I'm not an estate agent, but any person who works within the built environment um, knows that for every square meterage you add or renovate, there is a value added to your property. For example, if you have a semi-detached property and you're building a new extension, that extension will add value for every, I don't know, 40 square meters you add. I think I was talking to an estate agent the other day, and he said if you add a rear extension for a typical property, you add 50,000 to the value of the property. If you build a loft conversion, that means you're adding a new room with a bathroom that adds another 50,000. But then again, you have to pay for them, but you pay for them now, and then you sell the property after 5 years. That means there is an increase of the value of the property with time, and that's always the case.
Thank you. Next one is, where is planning in process? I'm guessing that's in connection to the refresh process, is that right?
Yeah, that was the design and build process. There was no planning step.
Where is planning in process?
So in our refresh process, I think
In the
Celine was
design and
this one.
build process, step
Yeah.
one was initial consultation, concept and
Yeah.
feasibility, working drawings and costings, and then build.
This one here.
Yeah,
Yeah. What's your question here, Christopher? How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Where's planning?
Oh, planning comes after you've done your concept and feasibility. Before you go here, you submit for planning.
Okay.
So whatever concept and feasibility we do, we will advise you whether this falls under permitted development or does it have to be into full planning, or whether what you're asking for actually is achievable or not.
So, but we're effectively going for planning before we know whether we can afford to build it.
Well, that's a very good question. In the initial consultation, we will formulate a project brief. The project
Okay.
brief basically will identify what is the vision, and also what is the allocated budget for this. And then here is where we can advise whether your budget is aligned with your vision and with what you want to build. Here, once we embark on a design, we will give you an indication of how much does it actually cost, give or take 10%. Once you get to here, in terms of cost, you will
Hmm.
get more or less a definite cost because you would have detailed your project and specified what you want to install there. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'll just go on to the other one. So, how many franchisees are there, and what is the geological breakdown? Who covers West Kent was the question.
Ali, do you want to answer that?
Yes, sure. We currently have 25 franchisees, and you'll be able to see their locations on our website. So if you please refer to refreshrenovations.co.uk, there will be a list of the locations on the map.
Cool.
Yeah, Refresh is a global franchise, as far as I know, and it exists in the UK. It is a very reputable company. It exists in New Zealand. It exists in Australia and America,
Oh, wow.
and it is a very reputable organization, very accountable. Everybody's visible, and then when clients engage with Refresh, they engage with a big organization that is very accountable and take on the project from start to finish. It's a turnkey solution, and I think you will see Refresh Renovations in all of the home shows. Ideal Home Show. The next one is the Ideal Home Show, isn't it, Ali?
Yes, correct. That
Yeah.
will be the next one.
Well, just a few more questions. I'm just conscious of time, so I'll just go through them. So it says all trees in conservation areas protected. I guess that's a question.
That's a statement. Yeah.
Statement, yeah. Do self-builds now pay still?
I'm not sure.
I didn't think they didn't used to.
I think the government is making us pay for everything these days. Yeah, but that's a very good question. I'll look it up.
Okay, we'll look up and come back to you on that one, Christopher. Next one, how are quotes provided by Refresh compared to other local builders?
I will answer the first part and I will ask Ali to do that. Refresh is a structured process, which means from the very start, we will be basically talking to you about your project. The project brief is the Bible of the project. That will not only set your vision, but also sets your project budget. Some people do not align their vision with their budget. And this is where we come in and say, it's not aligned, it's not going to work. However, other contractors and builders may treat this differently. Some people will say, yes, this is aligned, but then again, they won't tell you because the specifications of your project, when I say specifications, I mean all the second fixes, all the finishes, everything that you will see, look and feel, door handles, tiling, and everything that comes in between, whether underfloor heating is there, and then on and on. But then again, that is one thing, and planning is another, where planning doesn't have to do with anything now. But the quotes that you get are very accurate because you have done your working drawings, you have set your specifications, and this is the basis of your quote. It's not an estimate. It is a fixed cost that you get only when you get to working drawings and costings, as opposed to others. And usually in the industry, they give you a first fix labor and materials, second fixed labor only, and then the specifications, which are items you decide to buy, are basically up to you. But with Refresh, it is a managed process. That means it's a turnkey solution where you've got a one point of contact who actually is the point of contact with you as a client, and then the contact with the rest of the build team, because every project has a project manager. The project manager is coordinating with the build team, and also going back to the client. Ali, do you want to add something to that?
No, Salim, I think you covered the point pretty well. I would just say that the comparison, when you make it with local builders, I think that's a slightly generalized way. So when you talk about local builders, if you talk about companies with man in a van, or building companies that don't have insurances in place, who don't have a project manager, then yes, our price would not be equal to them. Our price would be slightly more. But I think when you will look at the breakup of labor and material for your project, once the specifications have been laid down, then we are very competitive in the market. Where people appreciate the value that we bring to the table, our prices are quite competitive.
There's a nice story I would like to share. A very quick story. During COVID, there was one of the projects we were working with Refresh on, had to basically it was an interesting role because there was a contractor working on the job, and they just left during COVID, and then the client was looking for a contractor to come and take on. So they came into to Refresh, and then they took it on during COVID, and they carried on with the project. So it tells you that accountability is key, and sometimes client do seek help, they do seek professional help, and they do want people to be there. There are always ups and downs for a construction project, but there's always a way to solve things. There's always a way to get things by, through discussion, through value engineering when the cost is just creeping. Renovations are very costly because it's a Pandora's box. You go into a property, you don't even know what's hidden. So the more you prepare, for example, when we go to a project, we actually strip out everything before we give that final price. Because when you strip a property, that means you take it to bay, you take it to structure, and you know what is rotten, what needs to be changed, what needs installation or not. And therefore, going into a two-stage during construction before you even start construction does help clients as well.
Thank you, Salim. Just a few more questions there in the chat. So one is, can you provide an example of payment stages or plan for one of the case studies and percentages? I don't know if you have that on hand, Salim.
We can provide that. We can provide that, no problem. It's a case by case, actually.
Yep, no problem. We'll get that information to you. Next one was, I have a side extension approved through planning, but I haven't built it yet. I have done a dormer under PD. If I want to do amendments in the approved planning, do I need to show the PD in the existing plans?
Well, any planning application lasts for 3 years, and if you started it within those 3 years, you can complete it whenever you want. And if you want to amend anything that has to do with the volume, has to go through an approval process. I know you don't need a planning application approval, but you need a certificate of law for development. If you are changing anything that has to do with the volume, and the fenestrations, that means the openings, then yes, the council needs to know. But if it's something internal, then you don't need to do that, as long as you get a building inspector to approve any structural alterations.
Great, I hope that answers the question. And last one, it says, what if the customer changes his mind in between the process, for example, flooring or kitchen, as an example? I'm assuming that's through the refresh process, is that right?
Yeah, Ali, do you want to answer that?
Yes, sure. If you look at the process that's here on the screen, at step number 2, we come up with the concept design and a feasibility report, and that feasibility report has a range, like Salim was mentioning to you. That range is there to capture that variance that would happen, because it's normal. People do change their minds. That's perfectly understandable. However, when you come to step number 3, where you then have your final specifications sorted, we do have to reach a stage which is called a design freeze, meaning you agree on those specifications and then we give you a final quotation. So by the end of step number 3, you get a final quote because we have frozen the design. At step number 2, you get a range of estimate that is designed to capture the variance in flooring or any other specification that you might have in mind.
I agree with that, Ali. Clients always change their mind, and I've got a client at the moment who's actually we're going through the last stages, and now they want wallpaper instead of paint on their walls, which is fine, and that's acceptable. That's always the case, as long as we know well ahead, so that we can allow for that, so that it doesn't get in the way of completing the work. Some people do have the luxury of waiting or expanding on the project program. But when you sign a contract with a client within a time frame and the client wants to change during the construction, the client needs to have a bit of flexibility to extend that program, so that you can't change your mind onto something that may impact the construction process and not be agreeable to extend the construction timeline, if you know what I mean.
Thanks, Salim. There's another question here. Does moving kitchen locations inside the house require planning?
No.
And the last question we've got here is, does your costing split labor and materials? I'm assuming
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Ali, do you want to answer that?
No, you're right. The costing is very detailed. It will have the quantities, square meter areas. It will have the cost split between materials and labor, because this 5-step process is designed to bring that transparency and give you that control, so that you can make informed decisions in case you need to update the scope of work. And that's how we will be able to deliver the project on budget and on time for you, because everything has been laid out very clearly for you.
To add to that, I think when you design a project, and because we come from a very professional background, the project has to, when you sign a contract with Refresh, it is based on 3 main categories. It is based on the drawings, on the scope of work, and on the specifications. These drawings will have in them every aspect of what you're going to do. But as we are humans, sometimes people miss something, and that's why we produce a scope of work. The scope of work captures in words what is going to be happening, and it's basically turning these drawings into text, and that text is legally binding. And then the specifications are all about what is going to be
Careful,
installed.
because if you fall down.
Sorry?
Okay, someone's just muted themselves. That's
Yeah,
okay.
and these specifications basically also will explain what is going to be installed, and so all of that is captured within the contract. And so yes, everything is going to be detailed because it's coming from a quantity surveyor.
Right. One last question I see here is, what is the approach to material sourcing?
Do you want to get that, Ali?
Sure. So it depends on what the scope of work is requiring us to do. In a lot of cases, our customers want us to source the finishing materials for them. So our quotation will be done accordingly. We would agree with you the specifications of what you want. For example, a flooring could be LVT, tiles, or
Ali,
say
sorry,
tile.
who's taking the risk of changes in cost levels? So once the costing is, if the market position changes and the cost of timber rises like it did with Ukraine, who's bearing the cost?
Every report you receive will have a validation limit. So when you receive a cost report, it has a validity of 30 days or or whatever. But usually we provide 30 days. Given the volatility
Okay.
of prices these days, it's a 30-day fixed cost report. If you approve it within 30 days, then we lock these prices in. If it goes beyond those 30 days, we'll have to adjust according
So
to,
if the build period is 9 months, that
yeah.
you're sticking with the initial price, uh, whatever happens.
Well, yes, because any price we put on is going to have to take into account the market volatility in terms of prices. So our
Okay.
prices will have to include some sort of a margin to cover ourselves, unless it goes beyond the set line. And I think this is captured in our contracts. We can
Okay.
share the contract with you for you to see it, but there is actually a mitigation to ring fence ourselves from stuff like that.
Okay. It was really the context. I don't know how anyone else in the call has heard of a company called Design and Materials, and their MO was to do very similar to this, and I think they collapsed under the weight of price changes, basically.
Yeah, indeed. This is a very valid point, Christopher. You're making a lot of valid points, actually.
I'm old, mate. That's the problem.
Okay, thanks so much, Salim and Ali, and those that submitted questions as well. That was really great. Actually, it's good to get some interaction and some questions there. So I just wanted to thank Salim and Ali for their presentations today. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. It's been really great. I will follow up with an email with an opportunity. If you would like to meet with one of our team, then obviously we can do that for you. So I will follow up with an email. And we do have another webinar in December, so December 17th, which is add value to your home, which kind of ties into this topic a wee bit. So I will also send you an invite to our next webinar as well. So maybe we'll see you again. But thanks again, everybody, and have a great evening. Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Sarah. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye, bye. Bye, Devji.
Celine.
Thank you, Christopher. I'll
Yes,
speak to you
bye.
soon. Thank you, William.
Don't know how to close it.